This is First Up with Kane Cornes. And Kane, opening round, it's in the book. It's just finished at NG Stadium where the Giants, they were far too good for the Pies. And really the difference, it was all in the middle. The run and carry of the Giants, they completely carved up the Magpies.
They ran all over them, Sarah. Good to be joining you from my shed, which I've got to say looks magnificent. Slightly hot out here in the pool shed this evening, but what a performance from the Giants. And you're right, this was how they got it done. Finn Callaghan was unbelievable. What's the three efforts here from this centre bounce goal? His performance, 33, 7 clearances. He had 12 score involvements, kicked a couple of goals, and finished with 700 metres gained. And this was the difference for me. Like, if we're worried about Collingwood looking old and slow, that's exactly how they look. Look at this again. Callaghan will get involved, but from the back, the run, it was the old-fashioned tsunami that you thought, geez, that's the way Collingwood want to play. But this was the difference. I thought the Giants defended extremely well, particularly in the third quarter. And after a barrage of inside 50s against them, they hardly conceded a score. So it was an unbelievable performance. Toby kicks this one. I thought it could have been a bigger win with the Giants dropping some easy marks inside forward 50. But when you consider no Hogan, no Green, and Briggs gets knocked out and they have to go with makeshift Ruckman and Lockie Keefe in the majority of the game, there was an unbelievable performance and really big alarm bells ringing, albeit we don't want to react to one game, but there'd be some real concerns for the Pies.
Now, I can't believe we're getting to this next part of the show this early, Kane, but you are absolutely bubbling away. So it's time to bring it on and bring on Vol-Kane-O.
How good's that look?
It's
New Vol-Kane-O. This is Craig McRae having a crack at Toby Bedford after he wasn't happy with some treatment towards Nick Daicos, the player he was tagging on. And Adam Kingsley responds. This is off limits. You cannot have an opposition coach going at an opposition player. There's a precedent for this. The AFL hate it. And if this is Alistair Clarkson or if this is Ken Hinkley, who got a $20,000 fine for that final, we know. Now, this isn't as demonstrative as what Hinkley was towards Ginnivan and the Hawthorn players in that semi-final last year, but this is in play. This is during a game, and the risk that this really boils over on the interchange bench, this is closer than what Hinkley was to Ginnivan. It's from a shorter distance. There's players involved. We can't have Craig McRae going at an opposition player and then the senior coach from the other side responding. So Hinkley got 20,000. I would expect the AFL hand exactly the same fine down to Craig McRae. And if it wasn't Craig McRae, and if it was Alistair Clarkson or Ken Hinkley, I think we'd be talking about this more. But yeah, it's one for the AFL to really go hard on once again. And even if it is a more significant fine, considering there was that warning from the Hinkley situation in the finals last year.
So if the league don't fine Craig McRae, do you think they're somewhat hypocritical?
Absolutely. Yeah, as I said, if this is Alistair Clarkson, if this is Mickey Moldhouse back in the day, or if this is a coach with more of a hard-edge reputation than what Craig McRae has. Now, he's known as a nice guy and a lovable guy and affable. We know all of that, but the same rules apply to the coaches. This is very, very similar and has the risk to explode like the Hinkley and Ginnivan situation did last year. So I would be shocked if it's not at least a $20,000 fine and a severe warning from the AFL towards Collingwood and its coach.
Now, it was a hot and humid day up at NG Stadium, and we did see players cramp. One player I wouldn't have predicted to cramp, though, is Pies superstar Nick Daicos, Kane. I'm not sure you're too happy with the treatment he received from the umpires. I've seen you fire out a tweet. What did you make of the situation? Because when it comes to players in cramping, in the past, you have been quite hard, and I'm thinking of Harley Reid last year.
Yeah, you're right. I was hard on Harley Reid, and I'll be equally as hard on Nick Daicos. Like, he's not prepared. Like, if you're cramping early on in the third quarter, now look at that, 15:41 to go in the third quarter, and you're essentially ineffective for the rest of the game. That says to me that your preparation hasn't been spot on at all. Now, we're going to get to this later on, but Nick Daicos is the best player in the game. That's where I've got him, but it's unacceptable to be cramping like that with such a long period of time to go in the game. I thought Bedford was unbelievable. He ran into the ground, and I hear coaches say, oh, you can't tag because it affects your team structure. It's the biggest load of rubbish of all time. It's a myth. Bedford, 9 score involvements, got off him at the right time. He was with him for every step of the way. And you'd have to go back and look at the preparation that Nick had throughout the pre-season. I know he had an issue with his feet there and missed some training, but clearly he wasn't ready to go for game one.
That's the coach's call, though, isn't it? That's in the hands of Craig McRae and not the player.
Yeah, well, clearly you're not going to play Nick Daicos, so they may just have needed to manage him better. Like, did he need to spend more time forward? You'd have to look at that, and only they would be able to reflect on his pre-season and his preparation going into that game. And it's one that I'm hot on. The players just don't train enough. They have too much time off. The AFL Players Association are doing the players a disservice for the amount of time they get off, and we probably saw that not only with Nick, but other players who weren't prepared and ready to go for the first game of the season.
Now, curiously, Kane, it was Sam Taylor who kicked the Giants' first goal. It was just his second ever career goal, the other one coming back in 2019. But what a performance from him in the back line. 9 intercept marks. He's got to be making a case to be the best defender in the competition.
Well, I think he's going to be. So you and I are going to follow this closely, but I mean, is there a better one? And do we forget about him a little bit through injury? He's had some nasty concussions, but his first quarter, he had 4 intercept marks in about the first 12 minutes of the game and a goal. And it wasn't only this stuff. Like, that is an unbelievable skill to be able to do that. Like, look at that. There's just the strength, the skill, and the positioning and timing to be able to do that was incredible. So Callaghan was the best player on the ground, but if we come Brownlow medal night and Sam Taylor doesn't get 2 votes, something is wrong. So the combination of him and Jack Buckley as the 2 key defenders for the Giants, I don't think there's a better key defending, intercepting duo in football right now. And, Sam Taylor, I think in 5 or 6 weeks' time is going to be back to being known as the best key defender in the game.
Now, you're not a fan of long-term contracts, but Sam Taylor, he did pen a 7-year extension last year, Kane. I mean, that's got to be good business, doesn't it?
Well, not if he gets another concussion would be my concern. He's already had some nasty ones, and I don't know what the threshold is of how many concussions is too many, but that's the risk the Giants have taken. Now, if you know that he's going to be fit and not have another serious concussion, then absolutely, but that's always the risk with these long-term deals, that the Giants are left with 4 or 5 years left, like the Demons were with Brayshaw, and you have to sort of pay that money out of your salary cap.
Now, if we cast our eyes and our mind back to Friday night at the SCG, Hawthorn were too good for last year's grand finalists, the Swans, recording a 20-point win. I thought Lloyd Meek was absolutely sensational, and he was up against a more seasoned player in Brodie Grundy. So it begs a question, Kane. Are Ruckman, and indeed Ruckman on big bucks, overrated?
Well, I don't think Ruckman are overrated, but you've got to target the right Ruckman. So here's some of his highlights, and you're right. You're absolutely spot on. His performance was phenomenal, and what a recruit. Like, he was unbelievable last year, and I think he'll be in the running for All-Australian Ruckman this year. Like, this sort of stuff, his follow-up. He's got a huge tank. We're speaking about players not ready for round 1 or opening round. He was fully ready. Look at him push forward and kick the goal. So if he can do that, you think, geez, he monstered them. I know that Isaac Heaney there, but far superior to Brodie Grundy, who has a larger reputation than Lloyd Meek. And I go, well, Freo had him. Like, Freo actually had him, and they probably chose to not show him the love, not make him their number 1 ruckman. They went in a clearly opposite direction and paid 2 ruckmen just a huge slice of their salary cap and gave up enormous draft capital for Luke Jackson when they had Lloyd Meek. And I just think when you look back at the history of premiership winning ruckmen, besides Max Gawn, they're not A-grade ruckman. There's the list. So the last 12 seasons, there's the premiership winning ruckman. Most of them have come from another club, and most of them you would think are B to C grade ruckmen who are paid well under the average AFL wage, apart from Max Gawn. Look at them. Nankervis, another club. Scotty Lysett. We're looking at, Roughhead for the Bulldogs. David Hale. Darcy Fort last year. The big O wasn't even there, and he was able to stand up as their backup and win the premiership. So the model for list management is not paying Luke Jackson and Sean Darcy $2 million out of your salary cap. It's to go and target a lesser ruckman from another club, make him your number 1 guy, pay him under the AFL average wage like the Hawks have done with Lloyd Meek, and get extraordinary results out of it.
Now, I know when it comes to footy terminology, it's always 1 week at a time, Kane, but I've cast my mind a little bit further forward when it comes to the Sydney Swans, last year's grand finalists, who looked unbeatable at times in 2024. They've lost their first game at home to Hawthorn, and I put it to you, they will start the season at 0-3 because it is a tough fortnight ahead. The Swans, they play Brisbane at the SCG, and then they travel west to Optus Stadium to take on the Dockers. I'm not saying it would be season over at 0-3, but it is a long way back and not where Dean Cox would want to be to start his first campaign as Sydney coach.
I love this from you. And at 0-4, it could be season over, because I'm not sure North Melbourne at Marvel is going to be that easy. Like in 4 weeks' time, I don't think they're going to be a walkover, particularly at Marvel. So I actually thought their performance was pretty good, and their third quarter, when they ramped up the pressure and contest, was excellent. But I want to take you back to pre-season when Dean Cox spoke to SEN, and we asked him what he wanted to see with the improvements of the Swans this year.
The way we defend, I think probably towards the back end of last year and certainly the last day was not at the level we want. So just the way we defend as an 18-man defence and how we go about that. There's been some tweaks to that method. And our contest method, we've sort of been inconsistent. That's not saying that we want to be number one in contested ball, because we want all our phases to complement each other, but we certainly need to improve that area as well.
So early days, couple of key players missing. We know that Mills and Goulden through the midfield are going to help, but cross on both of those metrics that he wanted them to improve in. So when you look at the numbers, -14 in clearance, -12 in contested possessions, which meant Hawthorn dominated field position and Sydney were only able to generate 40 entries. So of what he was looking for in pre-season, you'd think against a good opposition at home for the first game, they failed that one, and it's a metric that we'll follow pretty closely, on his words, throughout the year.
Time now for the temperature test, thanks to Sportsbet. And stuff the ladder, Kane. This is what it's all about. We're going to gauge where you think teams sit here throughout the season and have a bit of fun with the fireman reference. I mean, you weren't that bad, were you? But
no,
here are our categories. Really pretty bad.
Yeah, that sort of sums up the fireman career there. So you look a lot more in control than what I am. So clearly it's a hard one to do when there's only 4 teams that have played, but that's how I've got it. Hawthorn absolutely running hot. They're right in the mix to win the premiership. I don't really see them having a weakness. A bit spoken about their forward line, but I don't see it. I think the Suns, that may surprise a few, but I think they are going to surprise a few, and it's going to be a really impressive season from them. Thought the Giants were phenomenal, and right down the bottom, I guess the 3 on the right side speak for themselves, but you'd have to think Collingwood only scoring 6 goals.
Oh, come on,
the Giants.
Kane. That's a bit tough, isn't it?
The Giants missing Hogan, Green, and their Ruckman knocked out, and they manage 6 goals. They are old and they are slow, Sarah. And if they get 1 or 2 injuries, it's going to be a real concern, because they've sold their farm for this group. Houston comes back next week. He will help. But right now, on what we've seen today, they are freezing cold. And the rest, I guess we have to wait and see. But that's how I've sort of slotted in them on where I think they will be around the marks this year.
So Collingwood are like Richmond, a team that no one really expects to win more than 2 to 3 games.
No, it's different metrics for every... I'm not saying that, but on expectation, Collingwood's form today was frozen cold. No one would have expected. In fact, they were red-hot favourites. They were dominant favourites when Hogan was withdrawn from this Giant side, and then to deliver what they delivered today in the manner that they delivered it, that was a cold performance.
Fair enough. All right, just before I say goodbye to you, Kane, and goodbye to the viewers as well, this week on Tuesday, afl.com.au are revealing their top 25 players. This will be an article that is rolled out every month, so it will ebb and flow with who's in the 25. And it got me thinking, we should put our noses out there and name our top 5 players, Kane. So let's begin with yours. No surprises that Nick Daicos, the man we were talking about before who was cramping, is number 1. Where's the reigning Brownlow medalist, though? You don't have Patrick Cripps.
No, I had him at number 6, actually. Just slipped out. I think those players are more devastating. But come on, get some pickle juice into Nick Daicos and get him back to the player that we know he can be, and that is the best player in the game. I'm interested in yours, though. How different is yours to mine?
It's not too different, to be honest with you. I did include Cripps at number 5, but yeah, it's a good-looking list, isn't it? And I think, once again, all 5 of those players are going to have unbelievable seasons. And Marcus Bontempelli, could this be the year that he finally wins a Brownlow? It might be a bit difficult with the man in front of him at number 1. But Kane, that has been our first edition of First Up with Kane Cornes. We'll see you again next week.
See you next week.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.